I want you to try a little thought experiment with me today.
Okay, I'm listening.
So imagine you wake up tomorrow and the entire concept of value in our world has just been completely flipped upside down.
Wow.
Yeah. Everything you've been taught to chase, the luxury goods, the complex technologies, high status achievements, it all suddenly has a price tag of zero. Like they are completely worthless.
Right.
And the things you barely even notice, the things you step on or breathe in without a second thought, are suddenly recognized as the most precious commodities on the planet.
That is quite the paradigm shift.
Exactly. Does that sound like a dystopia, or does it actually sound like, well, a relief?
I mean, I think for a lot of people, maybe a bit of both.
Right. Well, today we have a single source on the table. It's a 2021 essay by a writer named Shifeng, and it's titled, "The More Precious, the Simpler and Cheaper."
It's a fascinating piece.
It really is. It attempts to build this unified theory of value, proving that the secret to a better life is exactly that, cheaper and simpler. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Our mission for this deep dive is to test this author's framework. We want to see if this absolute rejection of our modern obsession with complexity and effort actually holds up under scrutiny.
And it is a profound shift in perspective,
Hmm.
primarily because we are so deeply conditioned to measure value by the sheer amount of human effort or, capital required to produce something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we look at a skyscraper or a cutting-edge smartphone, and we automatically assume massive intrinsic worth
Yeah,
just because of the friction involved in creating it.
because it's hard to make.
Right. But the author proposes that this entire equation is basically a hallucination.
Which is wild.
It is. And what's crucial to understand right up front is the sheer scale of the argument here. This isn't just a manifesto on minimalist interior design or like a guide to decluttering your inbox.
No, it goes way deeper than that.
It's a grand, interconnected philosophical system. The argument starts at the absolute bedrock of biological existence.
Right, at the very bottom.
Yeah, and then it scales that exact same logic up through our social circles, into our cognitive processing, our healthcare systems, and finally all the way up to the structure of national governments.
The ambition here is basically to identify a universal law of nature. So to understand how that universal law works, we really have to start exactly where the author starts, which is raw biological existence.
Yes.
The text actually uses the word life in all capital letters to denote this baseline.
Like life with a capital L.
Exactly. The core premise is that for life, for you to simply exist and thrive as a living organism, the simpler, cheaper, and easier something is to obtain, the more valuable it fundamentally is.
And the author points straight to the physical fundamentals for this, right? Sunshine, air, soil, and water.
The basics.
The basics. These elements are indispensable. A biological organism literally cannot survive without them. Yet, look at their defining characteristics in the natural world.
They're everywhere.
They're ubiquitous, they are structurally simple compared to human technology, and they are entirely free. The author establishes this as the ultimate baseline for value. If the things that literally keep you alive require zero financial transaction and zero complex engineering, then true value must be inversely correlated with difficulty and price.
That correlation makes intuitive sense when you strip away modern comforts. Like, I was thinking about this like the mechanics of a wilderness survival scenario,
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, if you are lost in a desert and your body is shutting down from dehydration, your immediate reality realigns with this author's theory perfectly.
Completely.
In that specific desperate moment, a diamond-encrusted watch or the keys to a sports car hold absolutely zero utility. You cannot metabolize a diamond.
Exactly. You can't eat it.
Right. The only object with true measurable value in that moment is just a cheap plastic canteen of water.
Water is everything.
But the problem is that once we leave the desert and return to civilization, we seem to just completely forget that biological baseline.
Well, we don't just forget it. We actively invert it. And that's really where the author's argument becomes a sharp critique of modern society.
Oh, so.
The text explicitly states that the more valueless things are to life, the more complex, expensive, and difficult they are to obtain.
Interesting.
And what's fascinating here is the examples chosen to illustrate this. They are highly deliberate. The author lists airplanes, cars, computers, mobile phones, diamonds, luxury watches, heroin, and antiques.
Okay, wait. Grouping heroin, diamonds, and airplanes together is a bizarre choice at first glance.
It really jumps out at you.
It does.
Yeah.
Because what is the actual common denominator he's seeing there? I mean, most people would argue an airplane has massive societal utility, whereas heroin is purely destructive.
Right. But the common denominator is the massive systemic friction required to bring them into existence, coupled with their total irrelevance to biological survival.
Ah, okay.
Like to build an airplane or a computer, you need a global supply chain, thousands of engineers, rare earth metals mined from across the planet, and billions of dollars.
Massive effort.
Right. And to refine heroin, you need complex chemical processing and a massive illicit distribution network. To obtain a diamond, you need deep earth extraction and artificial market scarcity.
So it's all about the energy expenditure.
Exactly. The author is flattening the moral distinction between these items to focus purely on their complexity. They all demand an exorbitant amount of human energy to acquire, yet not a single one of them nourishes a human cell.
So they're all just zero value to life.
Therefore, in the pure context of life, they are equally valueless. They are artificial constructs that drain our energy rather than sustain it.
So we are essentially trading our finite time and energy, our life, to acquire complex things that do absolutely nothing to sustain that life.
It's a massive misallocation of resources, according to the text.
It really is. Okay, so if we accept that premise for physical objects, the external friction and high cost equal low biological value, how does this framework translate to the social sphere?
This is where it gets really interesting.
Because the author moves directly from physical goods into human relationships. And this is where the logic gets genuinely challenging for me.
The transition is structurally seamless, though. The author argues that when it comes to human relationships, the easier a connection is to maintain, the more beneficial it is to you.
Okay.
Conversely, the more difficult a relationship is to maintain and uphold, the more worthless it is.
See, I struggle with this rule when it comes to relationships. I have to push back here.
Go for it.
If I walk away the second a friendship or a marriage hits a rough patch just because it requires quote-unquote effort, isn't that just a recipe for total isolation and a complete lack of resilience?
That's the natural counter-argument, yeah.
Because we are culturally wired to believe that anything meaningful requires hard work. So how does the listener interpret this? How does the author differentiate between the artificial friction they are criticizing and just normal, everyday compromise?
That's the critical tension in this part of the text. But the author isn't necessarily advocating for transactional flakiness or like abandoning people at the first sign of trouble.
Okay, good.
The key lies in understanding what they mean by difficult to maintain. They are equating chronic systemic friction with a fundamental lack of authenticity.
I see.
Think back to the physical examples. Water flows downhill effortlessly, right? It doesn't need to be forced. Sunshine naturally radiates.
It just happens.
Right. The author is suggesting that a truly beneficial relationship, one that actually nourishes your baseline life, should mimic that natural flow. It should be built on genuine affinity.
So it's the difference between a natural disagreement with someone who fundamentally understands you versus the exhausting performance of trying to impress someone who doesn't.
Precisely. If a relationship requires a massive, constant expenditure of emotional labor, financial upkeep, or ego management just to prevent it from dissolving, that friction is a diagnostic indicator.
It's a red flag.
Exactly. It signals that the connection is artificial. Just as maintaining a fleet of luxury cars is an unnecessary drain on your financial resources, a high-maintenance, deeply forced relationship is a parasitic drain on your vital emotional energy.
That makes a lot of sense.
True value and connection shouldn't require you to constantly build bridges over massive chasms. You should naturally be standing on the same side of the river.
Yeah, especially when you apply it to the professional networking we all do, where we force connections simply because they seem valuable on paper.
Oh, absolutely.
And he takes this exact same idea of artificial friction and applies it to how we acquire knowledge, right? The text makes a very specific claim about teachers and masters.
It does. The author argues that in seeking knowledge, the teachers or masters who do not charge, or who charge very little, and who treat people equally, are the ones who possess real knowledge.
Wow.
On the flip side, those who charge exorbitant fees and position themselves as inherently superior are actually lacking in real wisdom.
This immediately brings to mind the entire industry of exclusive seminars, high-ticket masterclasses, and self-help gurus who demand thousands of dollars for access to their secrets.
Oh yeah, the whole guru industrial complex.
Exactly. The author is essentially arguing that truth operates like oxygen. It is abundant and necessary for survival, so anyone who actually possesses it would distribute it freely.
Right, they wouldn't hoard it.
Right. The massive price tag isn't a reflection of the knowledge's value, it's a smokescreen to hide the lack of value.
The exclusivity is the tell. We suffer from this collective cognitive dissonance, where we assume that because we paid $10,000 for a seminar, the information delivered must be profound.
Because we paid so much for it.
Exactly. But the author dismantles that. If someone has to rely on arrogant posturing, complex terminology, and high financial barriers to convey their teachings, what they're selling is an artificial construct.
It's just friction.
Genuine, life-elevating wisdom is humble, accessible, and cheap because it aligns with the natural flow of human existence.
Okay, so if physical luxuries and high-maintenance gurus drain our external resources, the author argues the exact same parasitic drain happens inside our own minds when we chase complex truths.
Yes, moving to the internal sphere.
Right. This brings us to focusing on our cognition, our mental health, and our daily routines.
This is really where the philosophy turns inward and diagnoses modern psychological suffering.
What's the diagnosis?
The text states that for the elevation of life, common sense, plain truths are highly valuable, whereas profound, complex truths are less beneficial.
Okay.
Furthermore, it argues that a simple lifestyle brings happiness, while a complex lifestyle inherently brings anxiety and pain.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think of your daily cognitive energy like a computer's RAM.
Okay, I like that.
A simple plain truth like treat others the way you want to be treated or spend less than you earn, that takes up almost zero background processing power.
Right, just a simple rule.
You internalize it, and it immediately functions to guide your behavior. But a complex philosophy, it's like a massively tangled ball of yarn. Yeah.
It might be impressive to look at, but it's impossible to actually use to knit a sweater. It's like having 50 browser tabs open in the background.
That is a perfect encapsulation.
You have to constantly think about it, contextualize it, and worry about whether you are applying it correctly. It drains your mental battery and slows down your entire operating system. The complexity itself is what causes the systemic anxiety.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the author isn't just saying complexity is annoying. They are arguing that complexity is actively pathogenic. It generates friction within the mind.
It makes us sick.
Exactly. When you surround yourself with convoluted belief systems that require constant mental gymnastics to uphold, or when you build a lifestyle packed with intense scheduling, complex financial leveraging, and rigid routines, you are inviting pain into your biological system.
The organism just isn't built for it.
No, the organism is not designed to process that much sustained friction.
And speaking of the biological organism, we have to look at how this theory addresses the physical body when it breaks down.
This is a big one. Yeah, and we need to be very clear to you, the listener, that we are strictly examining the philosophical argument presented in the text here. We are absolutely not dispensing medical advice.
Definitely not.
But the author makes a highly controversial claim regarding healthcare. It's a stark rejection of the entire modern medical industrial complex.
It really is.
The text states that for diseases, the cheaper and simpler the medicine or treatment, the more effective it is. Conversely, it argues that expensive and complex medicine has more problems and is fundamentally worse.
It is a radical rejection of the modern medical paradigm, which is, entirely built on hyperspecialization, intricate synthetic chemistry, and multi-million-dollar interventions.
Totally.
But to understand the claim, we have to look at the underlying logic of the author's universe. If the human body is a natural, self-regulating ecosystem that thrives on simple inputs like water and air, the author believes that introducing highly complex artificial interventions into that system will inevitably cause chaos.
Because you aren't just targeting the disease in isolation. The logic seems to be that when you introduce a highly complex synthetic chemical into a biological system, it creates a cascade of unnatural friction across the whole body, which is what we call side effects.
The mechanism the author is implying is a loop of compounding complexity. You use a complex, expensive treatment to solve one problem, but the sheer unnatural weight of that intervention creates 3 new problems in the system.
Which then requires more complex medicine to manage.
Right. The author views this not as healing, but as escalating warfare within the body.
Wow.
In their framework, True healing would involve realigning the body with the simple, low-friction state of nature, using remedies that do not violently disrupt the organism's baseline harmony.
So again, if it is difficult, expensive, and complex, it's just anti-life.
That's the core rule applied to medicine.
It is a staggering commitment to the premise. Like, the text is demanding that if this rule is a universal law, it cannot have exceptions.
No exceptions at all.
If it applies to a drop of water, and it applies to a friendship, it must apply to oncology. Which leads us to the final and perhaps most expansive test of this theory, the macro view.
Yes, scaling it up.
What happens when we scale this biological logic up to millions of interconnected people?
The author scales the philosophy directly into the realm of national governance. And the consistency remains absolute.
The same exact logic.
The exact same. The text asserts that the fewer government agencies, civil servants, and regulations there are, the more beneficial it is to the people. And inversely, the more agencies and regulations exist, the more harmful it is to society.
See, when governance comes up, we usually get instantly bogged down in partisan debates.
Right, left versus right.
Yeah, but what is striking here is that the author completely bypasses political ideology. They aren't arguing about whether a regulation is left-wing or right-wing, or what the specific intent behind a policy might be.
Precisely. The focus is entirely on the volume and the complexity of the state apparatus.
Just the sheer size of it.
The author views a sprawling bureaucracy in the exact same way they view a diamond-encrusted watch or an exhausting, high-maintenance friendship. It is an artificial, massive structure placed on top of the simple, sustaining flow of human life.
So a country is just a macro-organism.
Yes, and regulations, regardless of their intent, function as friction within that organism.
Because every time you add a new agency or a new layer of compliance, you are demanding that the citizens expend more of their finite time, energy, and money just to navigate the system.
You're adding steps.
You are making the basic act of starting a business, building a house, moving through society. You're making it difficult and expensive. And according to the absolute law of this text, anything that makes existence difficult and expensive is actively degrading the value of life.
The ideal governance under this theory would function like oxygen.
Okay, how so?
Well, it might be quietly indispensable for maintaining basic order, but it should be so incredibly simple, cheap, and unobtrusive that the citizenry barely notices its existence.
Like breathing.
Exactly. It requires zero conscious processing power to breathe. When a government becomes a labyrinth of forms, fees, and departments, it induces anxiety and pain on a national scale, mimicking the exact same pathology as a complex personal lifestyle. It drains the vital energy of the collective.
So what does this all mean for you? The genius of this text isn't necessarily that you have to agree with every single controversial application of it.
Right, you don't have to agree with all of it.
But it provides an incredibly sharp lens to reevaluate your daily friction. Like, I highly encourage you to look at your calendar, your bank statement, and your mental load this week.
Take an inventory.
Yeah. Where are you paying a massive premium in money, time, or cognitive RAM for something that is highly complex? Are you maintaining a relationship that exhausts you? Are you agonizing over a convoluted philosophy?
We're working 60 hours a week to afford an object that requires constant maintenance.
Exactly. And what would happen if you simply dropped the complex thing and replaced it with a simple, cheap, or free alternative? How much energy would you get back?
If we pull all these threads together, the text leaves us with a profound and slightly unsettling question about the entire trajectory of humanity.
Unsettling is the word, yeah.
Because we culturally define human history as a steady march of progress, and our primary metric for that progress is the accumulation of complexity.
We love building bigger things.
We celebrate how intricate our technologies are, how layered our philosophies have become, and how massive our societal systems are. But if this author's foundational logic holds true, if complex technologies, elaborate truths, and sprawling bureaucracies inevitably generate friction, anxiety, and biological harm, then our definition of progress is completely inverted.
We've got it completely backwards.
Does it mean that the entire modern human project has been a mistake of addition? Perhaps the highest form of evolution isn't about how much we can invent, build, and complicate.
Yeah.
Perhaps true. Ultimate progress is measured only by how much we can courageously subtract.
Subtracting the noise, the friction, and the artificial value until only the truly precious things remain. Just the air in your lungs, the simple truths in your mind, and the easy connections in your life.
It's a beautiful thought.
It really is. If you woke up tomorrow and the world's complex value system was completely erased, maybe it wouldn't be a dystopia at all. Maybe for the first time, things would actually be right side up. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.